Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. Today we are talking about Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City.
We gotta get out of here.
We're gonna take Umbrella down.
So Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City is a reboot of the Resident Evil movie franchise that aims to be a little bit closer and more faithful to the actual video game series. Pharmaceutical giant Umbrella Corp has left Raccoon City a wasteland in its departure, and when an evil is unleashed, it's up to a group of survivors to uncover the truth behind Umbrella and survive the night. So I'm going to start this thing off too, just going to give you guys a little preface, as far as me, as far as like a Resident Evil fan goes. So growing up, I didn't have like the original PlayStation. I grew up like some of my friends did, so I would go over there and sometimes play games like with them. But I didn't have like the original PlayStation. I want to say I didn't get. I think we had the PS2, but didn't get that till like later on after that had already been released. So I got to play the Resident Evil games. I never got to play on like a full on game really by myself until like way like later on. So I haven't got a chance to really go back and like play them. So I played them bits and pieces, and also too, it's been a while since I've really played like the Resident Evil games. So just wanted to kind of give you guys that little, fact about me before, going into this review, because these movies are supposed to be this movie is supposed to be more faithful towards the Resident Evil games. So for this film here, from my understanding, this kind of groups the games of part 1 and part 2 together. Which I thought was kind of like an interesting choice, because these are fairly, like big games. So, I mean, trying to put those two together into one movie was kind of weird to me. You would think you would kind of just like, split them up, like adapt like each like game. But basically with this here, the story, it kind of focuses on Claire Redfield. She comes back to Raccoon City to, talk to her brother, Chris. And, she has, like, suspicions about, like, Umbrella, and she wants to, bring this up to Chris because, he's working in Raccoon City, as part of, like, the police. So, she comes back, and we get to see, like, different flashbacks as to, to them as kids, like, growing up. And you also get introduced to some of the other, classic characters, like Jill Valentine, Wesker, Leon, and stuff like that. So you definitely get some of those, those classic characters in this movie. And basically, without, going into like really, like spoilers, you very quickly see that something is wrong, with Raccoon City. You see, there's this virus that's kind of spreading around like the city. It's affecting the people, and basically it's up to these, these group of survivors to make it through the night and expose, Umbrella and their secrets. So that's kind of the basic, plot. If you're not really familiar with Resident Evil at all, that's kind of like what happens in this film without giving you too many details. And I will also say, guys, that I actually, and I don't know if I'm in the minority here or what, because I know a lot of people don't really like the Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evil films. I really enjoy, it's been a while since I've watched at least like the first two, but I really enjoy parts 1 and part 2. And now don't get me wrong, I know, from what like I've heard, they're not exactly like great adaptations of those games. There's definitely, stuff missing. They took quite a bit of liberties with that. But just as far as like a action horror movie, I thought they were really fun, and I saw both of those in theaters. So part of it might be kind of just like the the nostalgia for me. I remember seeing those in theaters and just had like a lot of fun. So the first two films, once you got to like part 3 and the rest of the series, and I don't even know if I actually saw like the last Resident Evil film or even like the last two, but once you got to like part 3, I know it definitely went downhill from there. So, but I like part 1s and part 2, and so with this, it wasn't something that I was like super excited, looking forward to. And honestly, something that didn't help was that I feel like the studio didn't really do a good job of promoting this movie. For a while, like during the year, I was like, oh, like I had heard it, it was announced, it was coming out, but like didn't really hear a whole lot about it. And I know it didn't have like a big budget, so that could be why. But to me, it almost felt like the studio didn't really have a lot of faith in this movie, because it almost felt like it kind of just got dropped out of nowhere. Like quite a few people I know, they're like, oh, there's a Resident Evil movie that came out. So to me, like that, as like a fan, it comes across as like maybe the studio didn't really have a lot of faith in this film. But yeah, so that was a couple things, just kind of going into this movie like as well that I was wanted you guys to know, and just like kind of what my expectations were going into this movie. I will say, as far as like positives go, that one of the big things that I think that they did a good job with this movie is just it really has like this creepy atmosphere. From the start, the opening of the movie to the end, they did a really good job with that. You definitely feel like there's something wrong, with the city, and shit's about to hit the fan, and it does. So they did a really good job with that. At one point, you get to go to, the Spencer mansion, and there is some really cool sequences that are in there, specifically where like characters like in the dark and stuff like that. And I won't say much more about that because if you guys, want to check it out. But there's some really cool sequences there that were actually fairly scary. Like I wasn't like, oh my God, like this is terrifying. But there was like, if you were like there, like in real life, you would definitely be shitting your pants. So overall, the atmosphere, I think they did a good job with the movie as far as that goes. As far as characters go, the standouts for me are definitely Claire Redfield, Chris Redfield, and then I also really liked Jill Valentine, which I'm a fan of the actress, so it was cool to see her in the film. And I thought those were definitely like the characters to me that stood out the most. So I thought that they did a good job as portraying them. And there's definitely, from the bits and pieces that I remember of playing these games, there's definitely some stuff in this film that is, and I've seen other people mention it too, just that it's ripped right from, the games to the, the big screen. So I think that if you're a fan of the Resident Evil games, there's definitely going to be some stuff in there, Easter eggs, different things like that you guys are really going to appreciate. And again, just comparing this to the Paul W.S. Anderson films, that it's definitely more faithful to the source material than those movies, I think, were. So you guys, I think, will like that. Now, unfortunately, this movie definitely has some problems. There were a good amount of things that bothered me with this film. It wasn't something that's like, oh my God, it's like one of the worst movies that I've seen this year. But as far as just like, some of the negatives for me, some of the characters, like I didn't care for the character of Leon. He kind of just like seemed like a bumbling idiot throughout like most of the film and just like incompetent. And I get he was a rookie cop, but to me, that just like really like bothered me. And I don't necessarily think it was like the actor's like fault. I don't know if it was the script or like whatever. Wesker, like his character, didn't really care for him at all. And there was just like some of the other, characters and like the police and stuff like that we get to meet just make a lot of really dumb decisions. And I know this is, it's a horror, movie, and a lot of times you have that happen, characters making dumb decisions all the time. I love horror films, so I see that all the time. But when it's so like painfully obvious, so that's when it starts to, to bother me, when it really sticks out. Like one moment, I won't tell you what character it is, but there's a character that we see who is in a jail cell with this other person, and you can see, we clearly see that this other person, is sick. They're, turning into like a zombie or whatever. And the person that's in there kind of knows like what's going on. And, he grabs like a gun or whatever, and he's talking to this other character. And you would think that if you, like, one, he had a gun, so like he had a weapon, and, he has it pointed on the other person, but like, you see that this other person, because like he acknowledges that the other person there and doesn't look very good, and instead of like backing up so that way you're kind of like facing that character, and then this character that's in the jail cell with you, this character, he like backs right up to where this the person that's turning into a zombie, like basically right next to him, so it's not very hard for this person to grab him and whatever. So it's just that was something that I was like what, like just stupid decisions like that. So definitely some dumb character moments, unfortunately. And I know this is something that I don't really want to bash the film for, because I don't think it really had like a crazy high like budget. I think it was like 40 million or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong on that part, but I know it didn't have like a super big budget. Some of the CGI for me definitely took me out of the film, at certain moments. You see, like, you get to see like, the dogs in there, and like at one point when you see them, definitely looked a little off. There's some other characters that are in there that they look a little off. There's like a crow that you see at one point, and you can tell that it's it's CGI, and it really sucks because like it would be so cool to kind of make that a little bit like more practical, and that would that kind of stuff, like, give you a tidbit, because I've never reviewed it on my channel, but Pet Sematary, like, scared the shit out of me as a kid, and mostly because of, like, the dead animal aspect. Like, something about that just really creeps me out. So if those would have been a little bit more believable, that would have definitely added to the creep factor, for me. So the CGI in the film, while I know, like I said, they don't have a big, didn't have a big budget here, it definitely took me out at times, and that, that's, like, unfortunate. There was also some, like, weird decisions as far as, like, the, the storytelling goes. Like, one aspect that, to me, that, like, stands out. So these characters, they have to, like, survive, throughout the night, because there's a certain reason for that. And we just get constantly, like, reminded of what time it is. And maybe this could be just, like, a nitpick. So, like, feel free to be like, oh, well, I mean, they had to show, like, what time it was. But to me, I felt like we constantly got like, it was almost like we got a reminder of what time it was, like, almost like every, like, 10, 15 minutes or something like that. It would show us, like, what time it was. And I was like, I get it. Like, we have to get out of here by a certain time, because something's going to go down. But it just, like, I don't know, it just, like, really bothered me for some, reason. And again, that's probably me being a little nitpicky as far as, like, that goes. And then one of the decisions as far as, like, the directing, like, goes, I noticed that there was a lot of instances where there was, like, a lot of these, like, zoom in shots where it would just, like, zoom in on these characters, like, kind of slow, and it popped up quite a bit in the film. It was just these weird things that, I don't know, again, I could just be nitpicking, and, like, maybe you guys didn't notice it, but just a weird couple little choices like that like, bothered me. And then just overall, as far as, like, the story goes, just, like, some of the dialogue and stuff like that, it felt a little clunky to me at times. So, that was, like, a little, like, disappointing, like, as well. So overall, though, I mean, I still think that if you guys are fans of, of Resident Evil, especially if you're, like, hardcore fans of, like, the video game series, that there is going to be stuff in here that you are going to enjoy. And like I said, by no means is this, like, one of the worst films that I've seen, throughout the year. There's definitely been worse. And there is elements in here that I liked, like I said, just the atmosphere, I thought they did a really good job. As far as, like, the zombies and, like, the people in the town itself, like, I thought they looked, the makeup and stuff like that was really well done. And I liked some of the characters, just some of the other characters not so much. So it's kind of like a mixed bag for me. So as far as a score goes, I'm going to give this a 6.5 out of 10. Again, if you are a big fan, I recommend you guys checking it out. If you're not a big fan of the series, might be something maybe worth, waiting till it comes out, like, on streaming. So, but I'm curious, to hear what your guys' thoughts are, because maybe I'm in the minority here. Like I said, I like the first two Resident Evil films and the Paul W.S. Anderson series, so maybe I'm just in the minority here, but I want to hear what your guys' thoughts are. So let me know, have you seen Resident Evil? Welcome to Raccoon City. What are your thoughts? Leave that down below in the comments. Again, if you guys are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. Please give this video a thumbs up. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.